The dawn of humanity did not begin with sweet songs or lofty philosophy. It began with a scar upon a virgin land. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, as prehistoric mists still blanketed primeval forests, the first creatures in human form looked out into the vast expanse and asked, "To whom does this land belong?" The struggle for territory was never merely a tale of swords, spears, or raging fires of battle. It was a brutal survival instinct, a genetic algorithm written in blood, intellect, geography, and the supernatural longings of humankind across millennia of history. Journey back in time to the Stone Age, when the first Homo sapiens walked the earth. Territory then was not marked by boundary lines on maps or solid concrete posts, but etched in fear and food sources. In the natural world, a valley with fresh water, a cave shielding against blizzards, or a forest teeming with game meant the difference between life and death. When two tribes collided along a wild frontier, the struggle did not begin with a declaration of war. It began with shrieks shattering the night, blind strikes of stone clubs, and ruthless hunts. Archaeologists excavating prehistoric human remains at Jebel Sahaba were stunned to find deep traumatic wounds embedded in pelvic bones and skulls, stark evidence of humanity's earliest territorial massacres. Ancient humans fought for land by completely erasing their rivals' existence. In that primal era, holding land meant holding on to breath itself. Then, a quiet revolution permanently altered how humans viewed the ground beneath their feet, the agricultural revolution. As the first barley seeds were sown into Mesopotamian soil, land ceased to be a place humans merely passed through and became where they struck roots. Land became tied to wealth, crops, and a permanent livelihood. From this moment, the art of territorial struggle rose to a new tier, far more complex and ruthless. In the mystical land of Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Sumerian city-states of Lagash and Umma locked themselves in centuries-long wars over a fertile strip of alluvial land known as Gu-Edin. No longer chaotic clashes of small tribes, ancients began utilizing intellect and strategy. They erected stone stelae inscribed with sovereignty claims, invoking gods to witness their borders. When negotiations failed, they deployed phalanxes clad in bronze armor and wielding spears, marching in tight formations to push back the enemy. The ancient stele of the vultures still preserves images of Lagash soldiers trampling the corpses of Umma foes, a testament that territory was now measured by organized military power. As grand empires arose, the contest for land no longer stopped at a few farm plots or a small river. It transformed into a cunning chessboard for kings. Look at ancient Egypt and the Hittite Empire during the historic Battle of Kadesh. Thousands of chariots clashed amidst blinding dust storms in the Levant. Yet behind the clashing metal lay brilliant strategic minds. Ancient powers fought for territory not just with raw force, but with reconnaissance, tactical deception, and logistical capabilities far exceeding contemporary imagination. They realized that controlling a region meant controlling trade routes, mineral mines, and the labor of millions of slaves. Yet how could an empire maintain captured territory when geographical distance was an abyss? The ancient answer lay in engineering and colossal walls. From the Great Wall winding across China's rugged mountain ranges to Hadrian's Wall slicing gray across Britain, ancients carved their imperial will directly onto Earth's terrain. These walls were not passive military barriers against barbarians. They were declarations in stone, tools to regulate trade flows, tariffs, and human movement. Ancients claimed territory by compartmentalizing the world, transforming nature's infinity into the finitude of royal power. However, violence and stone walls were merely the tip of the iceberg. The deeper, more terrifying truth of ancient territorial strategy was ideological and cultural warfare. A land was only truly conquered when the minds of its inhabitants were subdued. The Romans were grandmasters of this art. When Roman legions occupied new territories from Greece to Gaul and North Africa, they did not just plant flags, they brought roads, aqueducts, public baths, and Roman law. They turned local chieftains into Roman citizens, absorbing native cultures into the empire. Territorial conquest under Rome became Romanization, assimilating the conquered so they would voluntarily defend the empire's new frontiers. In tandem with builder empires, ancient China developed a philosophy of territorial expansion based on Tianxia, all under heaven. Through the lens of Chinese dynasties, geographic borders were not rigid lines, but concentric circles expanding outward from the imperial capital to remote frontiers. The ancients here fought for land, using the classic geopolitical strategy of befriending distant states while attacking neighbors, a doctrine masterfully employed by Qin Shi Huang to annex 6 states and unify the realm. Territory was won not only with tens of thousands of bronze arrows, but through divisive treaties and covert schemes that caused rivals to collapse from within. In stark contrast to the anchored stability of agrarian empires, an entirely different mode of territorial conquest emerged across the vast Eurasian steppes: absolute mobility. Nomadic peoples like the Huns, Turks, and ultimately the Mongols under Genghis Khan did not view land through walls or fixed boundaries. To them, territory was pasture, arrow range, and horse speed. They fought for land through terrifying brutality and psychological warfare. By razing defiant cities and wiping out entire populations, they sent waves of panic hundreds of miles ahead of their cavalry. Enemies surrendered before battle even commenced, forfeiting land out of sheer terror. Steppe nomads proved that sometimes the most effective way to control space is the threat of its total annihilation. As the Dark Ages settled over Europe and Asia, the art of territorial conquest shifted into another sophisticated form: feudal networks and political marriages. Territory was fragmented into countless castles, fortresses, and manors. A monarch or lord did not always need to march armies to expand borders. They sat in dimly lit chambers, calculating marriage contracts and bloodline inheritances. A royal wedding could merge 2 massive realms without shedding a single drop of blood. Yet behind luxurious bridal gowns lay poisoning plots, forged wills, and shadowy assassinations. Land became a birthday gift, a dowry, or collateral on the chessboard of powerful dynasties. Simultaneously, the growth of medieval maritime trade opened a new territorial battlefield: sea gates and riverways. Early thalassocratic powers like the republics of Venice and Genoa did not need to conquer vast continental landmasses. They fought over tiny islands, narrow peninsulas, and strategic ports along the Mediterranean. By placing trading posts and galley fleets at these choke points, they held the entire internal economy of inland nations hostage. Territorial conquest evolved from a mindset of occupying space to one of controlling bottleneck nodes. Yet perhaps one of the most profound and mystical chapters in ancient territorial conquest lay in spirituality and religion. Ancients believed the land they trod upon belonged not to them, but to the gods. To possess land was to hold the spiritual axis of the universe. The centuries-long crusades between Christianity and Islam over the Holy Land of Jerusalem stand as a poignant testament. Blood soaked every stone and street, not for gold mines or silver deposits, but because that ground was the intersection of heaven and earth in their faith. Territorial struggle donned a sacred cloak, turning soldiers into martyrs willing to die to offer the earth to their deity. The evolution of military technology has always driven the reshaping of world maps. The invention of gunpowder and cannons in the late Middle Ages shattered the most formidable stone walls. Feudal castles, once symbols of localized power, suddenly became stone traps. Ancients had to redesign how they defended and claimed land. Star fortresses emerged, marking an era where mathematics, geometry, and ballistics became tools for drawing borders. Whichever power possessed superior metallurgy commanded larger cannons. Whoever commanded larger cannons dictated the boundaries of nations. Then came the Age of Discovery, triggering the most ruthless turning point in human territorial conquest. Wooden ships from Portugal, Spain, England, and France set sail across uncharted oceans. Ancient societies, or rather humans at the threshold of modernity, realized territory lay not just across familiar continents, but beyond distant seas. With a Bible in their left hand and a cannon in their right, They set foot on new lands across the Americas, Africa, and Asia. Territorial conquest now assumed the form of erasure. They planted royal flags in the sand, redrew maps with bold strokes of ink, and declared inhabited lands home to indigenous peoples for thousands of years as terra nullius, nobody's land. The Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494 stood as the pinnacle of this audacity, when the Pope divided the entire unexplored world between Spain and Portugal with a single line across the globe. The destruction of the Aztec and Inca empires, alongside the devastation of indigenous American populations, was wrought not only by firearms, but by invisible pathogens like smallpox and flu, unintentional yet lethal biological weapons. Territory was reduced to raw material, the silver mines of Potosi and sprawling sugar plantations feeding the insatiable greed of imperial crowns. No longer bound to dry land, humans learned to fight over abstract spaces, the open seas and skies. The concept of naval hegemony emerged as empires recognized that whoever controlled maritime trade routes controlled the world. Fierce naval clashes between the Spanish Armada and the British Royal Navy were fought not merely to protect gold-laden ships, but to claim sovereignty over distant ocean expanses. Looking back across the sweep of history, from prehistoric cave roars and Mesopotamian phalanxes to towering stone walls, treacherous political marriages, and high seas armadas, we see a striking common denominator. Ancient humans fought for territory with every tool available. Muscular force, mechanical engineering, law, religion, cultural assimilation, and genetic calculations. The ground beneath our feet today is not merely dirt and rock. Every square meter of the globe is enriched by countless layers of ash from fallen empires, watered by the sweat and blood of generations past. This is how the ancients fought for territory: ruthlessly, strategically, fiercely, and endlessly. They fought for the survival of their bloodlines, personal ambition, and the conviction that whoever holds the earth holds eternity. And that journey, though spanning thousands of years, continues to echo in the very fabric of human civilization.